Hi, my name is Verónica Undurraga. I'm a law professor at Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez in Chile. This lesson is about reproductive rights. Men and women alike are entitled to these rights. However, they are particularly important for women, not only because women are the ones who can get pregnant, but also because gender inequality in most societies make them more vulnerable to the infringements of these rights. The expression reproductive rights came into use in the last decades of the 20th century. Yet, they are not new rights. They encompass some traditional rights, such as the right to life, liberty, security of the person, and privacy. They also relate to economic and social rights, among others, the right to health and nutrition. For many decades, women struggled to raise awareness about high rates of maternal mortality, violence against girls and women, child marriage, forced sterilization, denial of post-abortion health services, and other such practices. The United Nations and other international institutions began to apply human rights treaties and declarations to deal with these challenges. Thus, the need was felt to clarify the notion of reproductive health and rights and to take measures to address reproductive human rights violations. The World Health Organization's understanding of reproductive health is built on the definition given at the Program of Action of the International Conference of Population and Development, held in Cairo in 1994. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of infirmity. Reproductive health implies that people are able to have a responsible, satisfying, and safe sex life, and that they have the freedom to decide if, when, and how often to reproduce. Implicit in this right are the rights of men and women to be informed of and to have access to safe, effective, affordable, and acceptable methods of fertility regulation, and the right of access to health care for enable women to go safely through pregnancy and childbirth and to provide couples with the best chance of having a healthy infant. Sexual and reproductive health must be understood under a human rights framework. This means that the respect and fulfillment of rights of the individual should be the main concern of health and developmental policies. In this regard, the importance of empowering women as right holders cannot be overstated. Throughout human history, women's body had been the targets of demographic, political, economic, or military policies with purposes not always consistent with women's rights, or even worse, purposes which directly infringe those rights. For example, governments wanting to increase the birth rate in unpopulated territories have denied women access to contraceptives. Military leaders aiming to intimidate or humiliate their enemies have instructed soldiers to rape women and girls living in occupied lands. Governments have implemented poverty reduction policies through aggressive sterilization programs aimed at poor women without their informed consent. Sometimes these policies reveal eugenic purposes, and it happens when they are specifically targeted to indigenous people or to people with disabilities. The human rights approach is also necessary to deal with infringements of rights that are not the making of state agents. Women's rights to sexual and reproductive autonomy and health are also violated. For example, when a woman is battered by her partner, a girl is driven into prostitution, a community leader bans sexual education for girls, or when a religious authority orders women to bear the burden of life-threatening pregnancies. States are obliged to protect all people from human rights violations by non-state actors. This is particularly important for women because they are disproportionately vulnerable to these infringements. Feminist scholars and women's rights activists have greatly contributed to the field of human rights by highlighting the gender dimensions of human rights violations. In most societies, gender determines the division of labor and the allocation of rights and responsibilities. Interwoven with other hierarchies such as race, age, or class, gender inequality is present in every aspect of social life and affects girls' and women's access to resources, entitlements, and freedoms. There is no society in which men as a group do not yield more political, economic, and social power than women do. A gender-neutral approach to reproductive rights neglects, for example, how violence and loss of life usually occur with respect to women differently than men, notably at the hands of non-state actors such as family members. Rights mean little to women if they are powerless and if they do not have the economic means or basic capabilities to exercise them. Therefore, a transformative concept of equality is needed to make sexual and reproductive rights available to girls and women. Transformative equality implies challenging social and institutional structures and cultural practices and the removal of causes of entrenched forms of discrimination. This concept of equality is embedded in the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, one of whose objectives is to address prevailing gender relations and the persistence of gender-based stereotypes that affect women, not only through individual acts by individuals, but also in law, legal, and societal structures and institutions. Reaching consensus on additional human rights obligations concerning women's sexual and reproductive rights is an ongoing project. Reproductive rights standards have developed through a series of international conferences, such as the Cairo 1994 Conference and the 1995 Beijing Fourth World Conference on Women, all of them with a strong presence of women's rights advocates. Also, the CEDAW Committee and other monetary bodies are continuously contributing to the understanding of reproductive rights through their general comments and recommendations, decisions on individual complaints, and observations made to state parties' reports. Special rapporteurs appointed by the Human Rights Council provide specific information on countries or concrete reproductive health issues. United Nations bodies deliver new knowledge, work on the ground, and offer guidelines to help states to comply with their obligations regarding reproductive rights. International and domestic courts make use of this important material when ruling on cases. International law on reproductive rights includes three main elements. The first is the right of couples and individuals to decide freely and responsibly the number, spacing, and timing of their children and to have the information to do so. This means, among other things, that access to contraception and information on reproductive health issues should be available even to marginalized groups, and that children have the right not to be married before reaching adulthood. The second element is the right to attain the highest standard of sexual and reproductive health. This right requires access to services such as voluntary family planning, pre- and postnatal care, both for mother and for child, abortion under safe conditions where it is not against the law, timely post-abortion care, and prevention and treatment of sexually transmitted infections. Thirdly, the right to make decisions about reproduction free of discrimination, coercion, and violence. Discrimination and coercion may affect lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals. girls that are subject to harmful practices such as female genital mutilation, persons living with disabilities, and women suffering from domestic violence. Laws generally criminalizing abortion are discriminatory and a barrier to women's access to health care. Treaty body interpretation considers that denying women access to abortion when there is a legal threat to the woman's life or health, or where the pregnancy is the result of rape or incest, violates the rights to health, privacy, and in certain cases to be free from cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. There is much to be done for reproductive rights to be fully protected. Yet today, the committed work of thousands of women and also men from all over the world has made possible to affirm that women's rights are human rights. Thank you for your attention. Please visit our website mucchile.com. Also, we kindly invite you to watch the next class of this course.